Zechariah 14. It will come about in that day, he's looking forward into the end time future, that living waters, that seems to be exactly what Jesus is talking about. Rivers of living water will flow out of the innermost being. Living waters will flow out of Jerusalem. Half of them toward the east and half of them toward the western sea. That would be the Mediterranean. What would the eastern sea be then? What we call the Dead Sea. What the Bible calls the eastern sea or the Salt Sea. Right? And the other half toward the western sea. It will be in summer as well as in winter. So this is an ever-flowing source of life-giving water. That's not typical in the land of Israel when you're moving east-west. For it to run all year round, but consider the source. It's going to come out of Jerusalem and from the presence of God. Summer as well as winter, there's a parallel in Ezekiel 47 that we'll get to in just a moment. Then it will come about, and this is Zechariah 14, this end time battle, where the nations of the world come against Jerusalem, but God intervenes and He takes care of the enemies, and all of those who are left over, any of the stragglers, any of the remnants of these armies of the nations that came up against Jerusalem, they're going to turn around and they're going to be going up to Jerusalem, not for war, but for worship. Not for war, but for worship. We'll go up year to year to worship the King. That's every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. They're going to worship Yahweh of hosts, and they're going to celebrate, bam, there it is, Feast of Booths, that festival or Feast of Sukkot that we talked about, that concludes the year and brings in that final harvest of, yes, produce and also human souls. And it will be that whatever families of the earth that don't go up to do this kind of worship at the Feast of Booths, no rain will fall on them. So notice again the connection between water and the Feast of Booths. Now let's go to the Ezekiel passage, because Ezekiel predates Zechariah by at least a century. And so we're going to look at Zechariah's influence, at his point of inspiration. 100 years before that, approximately, Ezekiel is saying, then God brought me to the door of the house. He's seeing this in the end time future. Water was flowing from under the threshold toward the east. Same thing that Zechariah said. For the house faced east, and the water was flowing down. Notice this is living water. It's moving water. It's life-giving water. Down from under, from the right side of the house, from the south of the altar. And he brought me out, and the water was trickling from the south side. And then they moved out 1,000 cubits. And as this water was flowing out of Jerusalem toward the east, 1,000 cubits later, it reached the ankles. Then another 1,000 cubits, and the water was reaching the knees. In other words, instead of getting less and less as it moved away from that source, the presence of God, it's not getting less, it's growing less, it's growing more and more. It's moving in the direction of a flood stage. Then another 1,000 cubits, and the water was reaching the loins all the way up to the belt. He measured another 1,000 cubits, and it was a river that I could not ford. You couldn't go across this river. There were very many trees on either side. These waters are going toward the sea, and I've filled in the Salt Sea because that's the only sea in the direction of the east from Jerusalem. And they were being made to flow to the sea, and the waters of the sea were becoming fresh. This is truly miraculous, supernatural, end-timesy kind of stuff. Why is that? Because today, the Dead Sea, Salt Sea, Eastern Sea, whatever you want to call it, is 34% mineral and saline. This is a place where, guys, you can almost walk on water. There aren't any floats being rented or sold there because you just lie down and that is the sea is your float. You're so buoyant. And so for these waters that are 34% mineral and saline to then become fresh, that's a truly kind of new age, new time period, messianic age, new heavens, new earth kind of situation. Every living creature in every place where the river goes will live. It's bringing life. This is life-giving. This is living water and life-giving water. For these waters go there, and they're going to be all kinds of fresh water, and there's going to be all kinds of fish. So everything is going to live where the river goes. There will even be fishermen that will stand beside it, the Dead Sea, Salt Sea, Eastern Sea. From En Gedi to En Eglaim, there will be a place for the spreading of nets, just like they do over at the Great Sea, which we call the Mediterranean. And by the river, on its banks, there are going to be all kinds of trees for food. They will bear every month because their water flows from the sanctuary. In other words, no relaxing of water. There will always be plenty of water, even in the dry, arid summer months of the land of Israel. Zechariah tells us the same thing, that there's going to be water in the summer in the same way that there's water in the winter, where winter rains typically cause these kinds of flash flood type events. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch our videos. If you're benefiting from the content that you're receiving from them, please make sure that you're following us on Facebook and that you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you never miss a thing. While you're at it, share our content with your friends and family. Encourage them to follow us as well. Thanks for helping us to reach as many as we can with a powerful message of God's Word in its original context.